In this video, I'm just going to walk through all of the parameters within the recipes that you can change and what they do. The very first one at the top of the screen there is the pump cycles per container. So these machines are set up to fill from pints through to 3-liter pails. So all of those fill volumes can be achieved with only one pump cycle per container. If, for example, you were filling a 5-gallon pail, you might need to put that up to 3 or 4 cycles per container. The one right below that is the fill cycle timeout. That is the amount of time that a fill cycle can take before the machine produces an error. So for example, if there was something stuck in the pump that was preventing the pump from extending all the way, after 25 seconds the machine would stop and produce a fill cycle timeout error, and that would let you know that something is wrong in the pumps. The third one down right below that is the fill start delay. That just gives the containers time to get all the way up against the line stops before the heads open and start moving. If you have this set to 0, it especially makes a difference on the smallest containers, because as soon as they break the beam of the sensor, the cycle will start. So having a slight delay in there allows the container to break the beam and then move up against the line stop to be in the correct position before the fill cycle starts. This will prevent any product spill. The one right below that is the pump start delay. Most of the time this is not used, but if for whatever reason you want the fill head to open to release pressure before the pump starts, just increase that timer. So then the head will open, and if you had set it, say, to a half a second, the head would open, and then a half a second later the pump is going to start filling. Right down below that is the outfeed backup time. So there's an outfeed backup sensor on the end of the conveyor, and this means that that sensor must be blocked for 5 seconds, and then it will pause the conveyor. As soon as this sensor becomes unblocked, the conveyor will restart. My recommendation is that you put that on your accumulation table, or you move it down to your accumulation table or down to a downstream conveyor that's constantly moving, and then when it gets backed up, our machine will pause everything, and as soon as it gets cleared again, our machine will just start back up like normal. The last one on this page is the lane stop close delay. So this is the delay from the time that the sensor is broken till the lane stop closes. A slight delay in this can just prevent the line stop from pinging forward the outgoing set of containers. This is different for each and every size, but if you use our stock recipes, the first 8 recipes are locked and uneditable, and this is already set up for you. This is now recipe page 2, and the first parameter on here, this top one, is the conveyor speed. So you can adjust this from 0 to 100, and it just affects the rate of the conveyor. And down below that, this is an option, and it's the conveyor ramp down on container release option. So if you turn this off, the conveyor is just going to run steady at whatever speed you have set above. But if you turn it on release of the containers, it will run at a lower speed. So you could set this to say 12 or 10, and it would run at 10% of the speed just to release the containers from the fill area, and then it'll ramp back up again once they're released. This is really good if you're looking for a really high fill on the container that comes right up to the lip, so you don't lose any product when the containers are released. The next one down below that is the conveyor acceleration. So that means that it will take 1.5 seconds to get from 0 to your set conveyor speed. And then the one down below that is the conveyor deceleration, and I have this set pretty sharp so that the conveyor will stop instantly, like on e-stop and stuff like that. So it'll only take 0.1 of a second for the conveyor to go from your set speed to 0. And then back up the top over here again is another option. This is the lid detect. So on the end of the press there's a whisker switch, and if you have this turned on, if a container makes it through with no lid, then the conveyor will stop and an error message will come up on the screen letting you know that there's a container with no lid. And then you just have to press continue cycle to get out of that error screen. And right below that is the lid detection time. This parameter is the time it takes from when the container breaks the beam of the sensor till the whisker can be flicked up to say that there's a switch, that there's a lid there. So this is set to 0.35. So after 0.35 seconds, if the whisker switch is still down, it's going to say that there's no lid. After 0.35 seconds, if the whisker switch is flicked up, then it will say good to go, there's a lid on there. Right down below that is in-feed gating, and for all of this particular machine's containers we are using in-feed gating. So if in-feed gating is off, the in-feed just opens up, counts 3 containers through, 2 containers through, and then shuts it. But with in-feed gating on, it's only going to let 1 container through at a time. This is particularly helpful on the smaller sizes and sizes with no handles, because there's no gap between the containers. So without in-feed gating on, the in-feed sensor never detects that there are multiple containers entering, because it never has a chance to see through, like there would be a gap on your 3-liter pails. Like if you push 2 3-liter pails up against each other, there's a gap down the bottom, but on your smaller containers there's not, so you need to have in-feed gating turned on. So below this are the timers that go along with in-feed gating, and this top one is how long the gate is going to be closed, and the one below that is how long the gate's going to be open. So the in-feed gate's going to open for 0.53 seconds, that's how long it takes for a container to pass through, and it'll close for 0.1 second, and that's going to create 0.1 second gap, and then it'll open again for 0.53 seconds to let another container through. This is menu page 3 of the recipe menu. And on here, this page only deals with your lid placing options. So right now, no lid placement is active. So that means that the lid dropper and the lid placer are both going to be turned off. And if you press it once, that turns on the metal lid placement, which is the lid dropper. So you're going to be able to use that for quarts through gallons on this particular machine, any metal lids. And this first option here is the lid dropper delay. So if you need a delay after the can has passed the sensor until the lid gets dropped, you increase that timer. You want the lid to be dropping perfectly centered on the container. So this is going to change based upon the size container that you're running. And then the parameter below that is the lid dropper pulse. And this is how long the escapements on the lid dropper stay extended to drop the lid. So if you, for example, had a slightly thicker lid or something like that, where you might need the escapements to stay open longer to give the lid time to drop, you would increase that. But for any standard metal lids, the current setting is acceptable. And if you press it one more time, that changes it to the plastic lid placer turned on. So those are the 2 larger units, and those are going to be used for only the plastic pails, placing the green plastic lids. And the parameters here, you probably won't have to change much, but they're the lid grabber's open time, lid grabber closed time, and the vacuum extended time. So same as on the metal lid placer, you may need to increase those grabber open and close times if you ever change lids that are maybe slightly thicker, or for whatever reason if they're grabbing a little tighter together or something like that. And then the vacuum extended time, you should only need to increase that if the vacuum cup has a hard time making a secure vacuum around the lid. But for the most part, these parameters work very well for any lid sizes.